Just wanted to, you know, talk about the current situation, what's going on, a little bit my perspective, um, and especially seeing what is taking place in here in Denver, um, and it's related to the to the horrific killing, pretty much a murder, by a cop in Minneapolis. Um, at some point in time, I'm sure in history, this is gonna get swept under the rug like so many of the other ones, and it'll be revisited time after time to look at different things from the Trayvon Martin to the LA riots, um, and decades and decades of just things like this that happens. One of the things that to me is just why the reason why I am kind of like pushed to do this video a little bit. It's a little bit off, a little bit like deviating from the current uh, topics I generally present on, but it's not. On the surface, it might seem that way, but on in the underlying aspect of things, it's pretty much based on the same thing, um, and it's like we have to like get to that root cause and fix that root cause, in order for us to really like get to that point where we're like not have to be dealing with this, because let's think about this for a second, like 1960s. I mean, we look at like the Dr. Kings, the Malcolm X, all those things way back in those times, and it's like we're still dealing with the same thing in 2020, which is like 40, 50 years, actually like 60 years roughly, in the future. Um, so yeah, I've been kind of pushed to do this. Like when I was driving through downtown Denver yesterday, and I saw like there's this energy where people want change, and people were just like walking around with placards, um, and then I'm like, I get this, it makes sense, great, people are like riled up, but then I look and I see like the buildings are getting defaced, like people are just like breaking stuff, spray painting. I mean, even the trees weren't safe, pretty much people are like spray painting the trees, um, that how much they hate the cops or FPTP or something like that. Um, and it's like, okay, so now we have this organized response to this injustice that took place in Minnesota, Minneapolis, where this is it's horrendous. It's a murder. Like I don't see it. I see it pretty much like you don't treat human beings like that. Like you just don't deal with human beings like they're animals. Um, but outside of that, our response has to also be a lot more, get into the root cause and fixing that, systematically dealing with the problem, and not just like responding out of emotional anger and like breaking stuff, and then when we break stuff we kind of like deviate from even what exactly we're trying to solve, because I'm even curious, like what exactly are what is the response that we're seeking? Are we seeking that this officer goes to jail and then that's it, or are we seeking that it's something else? And if we can put forward exactly what we intend to get from this, then maybe we can better measure how effective are the responses that we're like putting this energy into towards. But it's great seeing that like organized efforts of people in the street voicing their opinion, with their placards. And as for what I was able to see, there didn't seem like there was much violence, which is good, because violence, I guess, in most cases should be a last resort. Um, but we also want to stay on message, and it's like this deeper message. Like for me being an immigrant in the U.S., I came to the U.S. several years ago, pretty much, to go to school, and I never really, when I came to the U.S., I started to learn a lot more about the U.S., just the American culture, and just the history, and just how it impacts you on a daily basis. But one of the things I've been noticing since I've been here is in this country, like uh, the Black American society or Black people in this country. I mean, not just Black Americans, but like Black immigrants, Black everything else. Um, every national disaster that seems to hit the country seems to disproportionately like affect black society, especially Black Americans, like typically way more above the general populace. I mean, you take it here, for example, like, I mean, you look at Katrina, okay, like it's pretty obvious there. You look at the food, pretty much the food disaster in some way, shape, or form, where people are being fed things that, pretty much like lead to metabolic diseases, and you see which populations are most affected by metabolic diseases, obesity, and all these different, things. And then you take a look at, like, even more recently when you have COVID coming in, and COVID comes in and just like, it's like COVID doesn't see color, but somehow the number says it does, because it's like wiping out a good portion of like, or adversely affecting more like blacks in America. And so like, why is it that there is just this constant disproportionate negative effect on one portion of the population? And then you can even go further as like the prison population, um, unemployment, or underemployment, or stuff of that nature from the economics, like everything. And I go through communities. I've visited I've visited probably 40 to 45 states in the entire U.S. and a bunch of major cities, and you can kind of tell when you're like in a Black American community, or what they call a Black American community. It's like you just start noticing like all these things that are just like, it's like liquor store, pharmacies, some hot chicken wing spot or something of that sort, and you're like, and I think I asked a business owner one time, around like, why is it like every quote unquote Black American community you go to, you just see these things where it's like, it's not it's not seem to be building the community. It just seems to show up to take away from the community. And I think one of the response was like, well, when you go to the bank and you tell them you're gonna open up a fresh grocery store, a fresh produce store in like a Black American community, how, well, like they laugh at you because they're not gonna give you that loan. But for some reason, if you tell them you're gonna open the next hot chicken wing spot, like you're very highly favorable to get that loan to open in that community. And I think those are some of the systematic problems that are like underlying cause a lot of the problem that we see here on the surface. Is that we as a people need to understand that we have to like design our communities and generate for our communities the value and like just a deeper sense of sustainability, just the general sense of community, to be able to overcome a lot of these obstacles that are placed through systematic biases, and pretty much move forward. And it comes back to the same thing with this. It's like, okay, so after we're done, which I know a lot of us are not the ones doing it, but after the media tells the story that, okay, we've defaced the Capitol building and we have done this and we have done that, the cop gets pulled to court and he gets charged. How are we gonna like leverage this new momentum to ensure that this is not something that we have to be fixing every few years? That is not something that we have to like get back to, where we're constantly trying to figure out how it is that we're gonna like just patch the wound. Like there's something deeper here, and I think that deeper aspect comes down to like our capacity for wealth as a community. And when I use the term wealth, I'm not defining like how much money you have in your bank account or how much, but there's some correlation to it, but it's deeper as to like how organized are we? How organized are we as a people, as a community? how well can we actually sustain for ourselves in producing valuable assets for the rest of the community, and ensure that, you know what, if X business over here is not supporting our cause or is not doing the things that we think is building our community, that we can actually do that for ourselves. Because let's be honest right now. If any one of the major grocery store chains in the community decide, like, you know what, or if all of them decide that, you know what, we're not going to support your cause because you don't have a choice. Like, what are you going to do? Let's be very frank. You don't have a supply chain. Like, we don't have a supply chain in place that says we're gonna focus. We're gonna build our own supply chain. And so if you are not doing things that are gonna be like pretty much like improving our communities, we're just gonna like move ourselves away and like focus on our own and like do things for ourselves. And until you have that, it doesn't matter how much, how much strikes we have and like march we take. It gets back down to the fundamental of ensuring that you can actually access the resources you need as a community to flourish. And that is pretty much wealth. And so when I talk about wealth, I'm defining wealth in terms of like the proper allocation of specialized knowledge effectively deployed along the tasks required to complete a specific plan. And in doing that, like, yeah, that might have been my definition that I came up with. So you might not be able to find it somewhere else. But why I say that is, it really comes down to how organized are we as a people. And we have to organize to ensure that the things that are necessary in the community to move us forward and to sustain us are constantly being enhanced and constantly being developed, so we know that as a people we can get to the table and we can sit at the table and say, we have this opportunity here to like take our thing elsewhere, if we don't feel like we're being respected at the table. And so that's just kind of like what I wanted to touch on is, I love the fact that there's an energy, there's an organization going on right now where people are like, we're voicing our opinion and this thing cannot continue. Like we've been dealing with this for years and years and years. It needs to be fixed. But let's also spend some time coming up with the strategies and the underlying plans so that we can effectively deploy the resources in the areas that are gonna offer returns most significant. And so yeah, that's what I wanted to share. But you know, let's keep doing the best we can. But also let's not lose sight of the greater goal. Emotions are currently high, and yeah, let's do the best we can. Thank you very much for tuning in, and yeah, look forward to catching up with you guys again. Let me know if you have any thoughts along these lines or any questions or if there's anything you want to share. Otherwise, peace. Thank you.